Hello, and welcome to everyone listening in to the meditation. And thank you all for participating. Like at every class, before we begin, we'd like to remind you that what is being presented is based on logical reasoning and an extensive use of the notions of cause and effect as the fundamental law that governs all produced things. This is being said to ensure that you use your own critical and logical thinking, and to be aware of any irrational thought that might object, and to try thinking about it before discarding the idea. Therefore, the teaching will try to follow logical reasoning, so if something is not clear, please feel free to send your thoughts and questions to guide@personalmeditationguide.com. In this session, we will be discussing stress, what it is, a definition for it, how to reduce it, and eliminate it completely from our mind. So what is stress? Now, in many places you could read about good stress or bad stress. Now, what we will be focusing on, of course, is the bad stress. And good stress, we will just define it as enthusiasm. Because if it's good, that means your mind is at peace with it, and therefore everything's okay. Whereas bad stress, which we will just be calling stress from now on, will be the one that is associated to a negative feeling in your mind. Now, once again, the premise is that happiness and suffering, their causes, can only be found within the mind, is very important here. Because stress is a feeling. Therefore, its cause can once again only be found within the mind. Please refer to Meditation 1 regarding happiness and suffering for further information regarding the causes of suffering. So what we will be looking for are the states of minds that cause stress. Now, to understand stress a bit more, using an analogy like an elastic, the more tension you put on the elastic, which is stress, it will have the tendency to break. So if we contemplate and look at stressful situations in our lives, such as work, maybe our children, our family, our friends, our financial situation, so on and so forth, the causal state of mind is actually a mind that is rejecting reality. So you have a reality that is unfolding a certain way, and you have our desires, our wishes, that doesn't want reality to be a certain way, that wants it another way. Therefore, there's a gap between what is happening and what we want. The larger the gap between reality, meaning what is happening, and what we desire, is that distance that is creating tension and stress. So the larger the gap, the larger the tension, therefore larger the stress. So in reality, if we look within our mind, we will see that stress is caused by a rejection of what is happening, of rejection of what is unfolding, and therefore causing this unpleasant feeling in our mind, which is creating the feeling that we call stress. And this is a very negative state of mind, which will create a lot of problems for us. As we can read in a lot of journals, stress is a main cause for other diseases, because the stress in our mind will then create physical stresses. But ultimately, the root cause of all of this is the rejection of what is happening. Now, does it make sense to reject what is happening? The way we will describe what is happening is, in other words, an effect. Now, since it has occurred, it cannot be changed by definition, since it is the past. So therefore, rejecting it serves no purpose if we contemplate it rationally. Rejecting something that has already occurred and that cannot be changed only serves the purpose of creating stress and tensions in our mind, and thus creating this negative feeling, or what we call suffering. So the solution actually presents itself quite easily once we understand the right problem, that the cause of stress is always a rejection of what is. If we negate rejection, what are we left with? We're left with acceptance. Acceptance is the negation of rejection. And if we contemplate how if we accept reality, if we accept what is happening, then we will be at peace with it. Because there's no more tension, there's no more gap between what we would want it to be and what is. The solution might seem very simple and straightforward, and it is. The difficult part is actually changing our mind to accept what has happened. So that's in the case of what has happened. Now, another particular case of stress that might occur is what's to come. Now, because what's to come has not yet passed, we usually get stressed out of a projection of the worst case scenario. We don't want something to occur, and therefore become stressed because there's a gap between what we want and what might occur. Now, the way to employ acceptance with regards to what might occur is to contemplate every option and to accept every option that might occur as it is a probability. And knowing what you can do if that outcome occurs. Therefore, it's more about planning properly, but to accept every situation that might occur. And then working back from all the options that might happen, we work towards the best option, always taking into consideration that happiness and suffering are states of minds. Therefore, their causes do not come from external circumstances, such as money, food, job, friends, family, and so on, as discussed in the first session. That might change the answer of what efforts you put in which option. But nonetheless, it always becomes a question of acceptance. Now, to make a quick summary with regards to acceptance and how it is the most sensible and rational thing to do, if something cannot be changed, then there's no point rejecting it, since it cannot be changed. So rejection will only lead to suffering, whereas acceptance will lead to peace of mind. Now, in the case where things can be changed, then what is the point of rejecting what is? It will only create problems in your mind, and therefore it might lead to making the wrong decisions in your life. Whereas, if it can be changed, might as well accept and be at peace with the current situation and work towards where we are to a better outcome. What usually happens is that we become impatient. We want the results to happen right away, without taking into consideration cause and effect. That is the biggest problem. We do not accept where we are right now. This is like saying that we are at point A and we're trying to get at point C, but our mind is telling us that we need to be at point B to make it at point C, without taking into consideration that we're not at point B. We would already like it to be so, therefore rejecting that we might not be there yet, and thus making wrong decisions in our life because we're not taking into consideration the current circumstances we are living in. So really all of this discussion with regards to acceptance is about being more realistic and accepting the reality in which you are faced with. Also accepting the realities of future outcomes, but always working towards the best outcome, but accepting any outcome that might occur so that you could properly course correct. A mind that is rejecting what is a mind focused on only looking at the problems. It is automatically delusional, meaning that we are not looking at reality properly. Reality is being warped by our own negativities. Whereas a mind of acceptance is a solution-oriented mind, open to any possibilities, and making the right decisions just in time based on the situations we are faced. So no matter how adverse the situation might be, acceptance is the only way to properly move forward. because it is a mind that is willing to do what it takes without becoming impatient and without rejecting the necessary efforts to put in place to get the desired outcome. But once again, we must never forget that happiness and suffering are states of mind. So therefore, the efforts that we place in the outcome we want, which is usually happiness, have to follow from that principle. Otherwise, we will just keep creating the causes of suffering. To give you more examples where acceptance is the most beneficial, let's take, for instance, a disease. Let's say we are diagnosed with cancer, with only a couple of weeks to live. What choice would we like to make in our lives? The choice where we reject the fact that we are ill and thus live the next weeks of our lives in misery and suffering, in anger? Or do we choose to accept our current reality and live at peace with the next weeks? Now, this does not mean that we cannot go for medical attention. Of course not. It means that if we are diagnosed with cancer, we look at all the options necessary to see what could be the best outcome. If there is a chance of survival, then we take the proper medications with regards to our current situation, and we accept the outcome, whether it be life or death, and therefore live at peace with the next weeks in our lives, as opposed to utter and complete fear and misery. That is the difference that acceptance will do in your life. Now, we could take the example of the disease and change it for any other circumstance, and the thought process still applies. And we will come to see how acceptance is always the most rational, makes the most sense, and which leads to our peace of mind, thus giving us the ability to feel happiness, even within the most adverse conditions. Now, it might sound very difficult to do, and that is why we must train our minds to practice reacting in an accepting way with regards to what is. Another example that we might use, other than the disease, which might be more prevalent, would be our work condition. So, for example, we are given a deadline, and we understand that the deadline might be impossible or very difficult to accomplish. And because of the difficulty of accomplishing this deadline, it might imply that we will need to take time from our other daily activities to do our work. This is the point that we might reject. We might reject the fact that we'll have to spend more time working instead of doing other activities that we want in our personal lives. Where if you push the deadline example to its extreme, where it's impossible to accomplish what is needed in a desired time, then we could see that we get into even more of a rejection state. We reject the fact that we might have to work more hours, and we reject the fact that we might never be able to make it, and thus our reputation might suffer from it. Whereas an accepting mind might understand the dynamics, and therefore understand that either we choose to not take more time, or maybe it's impossible to take more time to work because we have other family commitments, and understand that maybe even no matter how much time you put into it, it will be impossible to accomplish the goal. And therefore, the solution might be to discuss it with the people involved to either reduce the scope of the work to be done, to either meet the deadline, or to change the deadline, as the scope of the work is impossible to fit in there. And also accepting that you can only do your best, and the outcome, no matter what it is, you will be comfortable with it, regardless of the consequences of not fulfilling that goal completely. Now, the solution is up to you to take, but in every circumstance, an accepting mind is just more ready to look at all possible solutions and to accept whatever outcome might occur. Always, of course, working with the best outcome in mind. These are not mutually exclusive, because we must understand that we all want peace of mind. Therefore, the mind that accepts is the one that will ultimately accomplish that goal. So the ending meditation will be to train our mind towards learning how to accept things. To do so, we must start contemplating that what has happened, what has occurred, cannot be changed. We must give up the idea that things could be other than what they are, and to accept our current circumstance. We must get to that conclusion, to that reality, that an effect can no longer be changed, no matter how much we wish for it to be different. By accepting our current circumstances, we can make better choices for our future self, because our decisions will be based in reality and not on some wishful thinking. So we must learn to fabricate this mind of acceptance, this mind that feels okay with what is. We have to feel it wholeheartedly, without any but or if in our minds with regards to what is. We must try to let go of all our objections, all our desires with regards to what is, and accept the current circumstance. Once again, we must beware to not confuse what's to come. That is a planning exercise with regards to the best outcome. So please concentrate where we let go of all our wishes that the current, immediate circumstances can be any different, because they are already in effect. And once we understand that what is cannot be changed, we fabricate the mind of acceptance, a mind that lets go that things could be otherwise. It is a mind that is calm and peaceful. And once you have found that experience, that let go, that things should be otherwise, that is the mind of acceptance. If you want, use a particular experience in your life, maybe something in particular that has happened in the past, or something that is happening right now, the immediate circumstance. Whatever it is, look into your life and try to find a mind that is rejecting it, the mind that wishes that it could be otherwise, and see how that mind only leads to suffering, because it's wishing upon something that cannot be changed. So once you see how that mind does not make sense, let it go, and let go of the wish that things could be otherwise. And once again, once you have found that feeling, that experience, or if you have to fabricate that experience of feeling okay, of accepting what is, or what has occurred, meditate on that experience. Thank you.